Vulture, Mark, welcome to the
Thank you.
infinite web of the
It's
internet.
good to be here. Finally,
Yeah, at last.
free at last.
Uh-huh.
Or are we?
That's what I was going to ask you. Where are we? Where is it good to be?
Well, I was saying, or are we? Are we free at last?
Oh,
Where are we? Hmm, that's a deep question. Potentially at the center of everything, I guess.
are you at, yeah, you're at the center or I'm at the center? Or we're each at the center?
I think we're both at the center.
I think, isn't like Whitford City Shopping Center the center of the universe?
Yeah, that huge granite bowl fountain thing.
Yeah.
This is pretty.
Sorry?
Um, that's pretty niche.
Pretty niche, true,
Hmm.
but hey, people living in the vicinity, the northern suburbs, probably nah, definitely.
All the listeners in Balga and Karrinyup are. Well, Karrinyup would have
What?
different allegiance, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah, be offended. We're not talking about their
Hmm.
shopping centre. So, welcome, uh, all third parties to Rendezvous with Jamie McGlue or with Mark McGlue. Maybe we'll change the title for today. Rendezvous with Mark McGlue. So this is my
Wow.
beautiful twin
Nice.
brother. So, um,
Thank you for having me.
oh, you're very welcome. So I think we should begin with some. I forgot the theme music. Uh, I forgot to make
Right.
up some theme music and pretend it was pre-prepared for episode 3.
Uh-huh.
So I guess we can make up for that now. So
Well, you can. I mean, here's the thing with the logistics of audio over the internet.
yeah,
If you play guitar, I'll sound out of time to you, though you would sound out in time to me if I played. So should I get my guitar? Unless you want to do it and I'll just nod like this.
I think I will give a theme song, and then you can give a theme song,
Okay.
and then whichever one is superior, we can have like a public vote. Probably like maybe 2 people will comment on YouTube, and then hopefully an odd number, and then can say whichever one. Basically, I'll change the name of the podcast to Mark McGlue if yours is better.
Okay. Sounds good. Just for today.
Rendezvous, guess who we're gonna be seeing? It's gonna be you, it's gonna be me, it's gonna be Ramses and assorted trees. Trees? Yeah, you heard it right. At least they're out of sight, but I can see 'em. The many plants in my room, and they're giving me good vibrations, which I'm sending out with the Rendezvous with Jamie McGlue. All right, there we go. Your turn.
Beautiful. Okay. Give me a second.
Thank you, Claire. Thank you, Claire.
Shout out to my friend Rosie's guitar.
Yeah, that's what
Very beautiful.
I kept meaning to ask. Like, hey, what is that guitar?
Technically not
The
mine, but
Hurley logo.
yeah, it's got Hurley. I mean, we won't get sued for that. Let's see. Now, I think I'm cheating a little because technically I came up with this little melody the other day, but let's see. What is it? Yeah, you know, it's a roly-poly world, all the boys and girls in... No. Ready? Three,
Yes.
four. It's a roly-poly world, all the girls and boys sit and wishing. Twintuition. Roly-poly world, all the boys and girls sit and wishing. Twintuition.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
You
thank you.
definitely win. That's excellent. Yeah. It's a
Well, we'll see.
roly-poly world.
You
Of
agreed to the
boys.
voting. You agreed to the voting system, which we all know the voting system is real and works.
Definitely.
It's
I
actually
mean,
representative.
I'm not one of those conspiracy theorists or whatever.
What
or
is that? I keep hearing about that a lot.
I think comes from Spanish, and
Hmm.
spiracy is from like Spyro, like that dragon game. So it's like
Oh, yeah.
with the dragon, and then theorist I think is like
Hmm.
propaganda in CIAEs, you know.
Hmm.
So it's like something about with the dragon of the Central Intelligence Agency, something like that.
Right. Okay. Those. Yeah. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah. So anyway, but I think
Do you want to hear a joke?
uh oh, yeah, okay.
Um, so someone walks into a bar and says, "Oh, excuse me, barkeep, I just got a couple questions." And the bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve conspiracy theories here." And yeah, that's a joke.
Amazing. I love that
Yeah,
joke.
I still don't know what a conspiracy theorist is, but I like the joke. So yeah.
Yeah, I think it is a taboo which is used for intellectually lazy people to avoid having to explain their views, which may or may not be correct, their views, but it's,
Hmm.
but yeah, it's like that's what it is, right? It's like
Well,
em-
yeah,
lowering yourself to the level of emotion, so, ad hominem, right? Attacking the man rather than the idea.
yeah. I mean, yeah, exactly. I think ridicule is an easier response than intellectual investigation. I mean, something, whether it's true or not, even having to investigate it, kind of involves risk. And yeah, I think it's easier for a lot of people to, whether it's true or not, just be like, ridicule it. Because, generally people just want to get on with their life and not
Yeah,
look under the rock or whatever.
yeah. Not fly on the rug. Not a whole new world.
Rug? Yeah, I did say rock, but rug
Oh,
too.
rock.
Yeah.
Oh, look under the rock. Yes, true.
Mm.
Where some people have been living. Be like, oh my god, how many people are living under here? you know,
Yeah. It would
sorry to
be
disturb you.
billions.
Billions.
We'll
Yeah.
find out.
Well, God, God's sitting on a rock. He's like, we're all living under God's rock, I guess.
Yeah. Rock of Ages. Amen.
Yes, indeed. Um,
Mm.
yeah. So you're saying it's easy? Uh, no, it's risky. You're saying.
Yeah, well, I mean, you know, realistically, yeah, there is in one sense, people not wanting to consider new ideas is, you know, that's just the way it is often with, like, it seems with the human psyche. Whether it's just you're in a relationship and you don't want to consider that what the other person is saying is true, uh, because it's difficult to comprehend emotionally. So there's this connection between intellect and ideas and reasoning, and then there's the subconscious at work of emotions. So there are emotional reasons you might not want to look at something because it's going to threaten your worldview or even just your view of yourself. And so if you can project your emotions outwards by either like criticism of someone else, say in a relationship, or ridicule of another person within a society if they're trying to bring in new ideas or question the current prevailing status quo, um,
Hmm.
that, yeah, it is easier to kind of project outwards than to allow something to come in towards you in many ways, I think. And yeah, there's that
Yeah.
aspect to it.
Yeah. Seems like we have our narratives about like what's happening and what's real, and then
Mm.
when that's challenged, it's kind of, I guess it involves a lot of like intellectual work sometimes to like you have to consider like, or maybe the structures needs to be edited, but then also the very idea that the structure could be wrong. Some people find that very intimidating. They're like, if you've got a culture of like open mindedness and intellectual curiosity and truth seeking, I think especially if you're aware that underneath everything, the truth is just exit your mind. Outside of your skull, the truth is It's just here, you know? Like
Mm.
just meditate, go into your breath for 10 seconds, and then the truth is there, you know? So it's like you're not worried about like the chaos, because you're like, no, it's all, the mind is just an approximation. Logic's useful for kind of a certain level of analysis, but the truth is here. It is what it is, whether we know it or not. But I think maybe some people, the idea that their view in their mind of things could not be correct is kind of like mildly terrifying. So there's that fundamental fear is brought up. Also, they think someone's pushing onto their turf, their territory, so the reptile instincts kick in of like defend. But then also what you're saying, which is interesting, is like you made me think of like that maybe people have these emotions which could be from like, oh, I'm wrong, I might be wrong, or like, or whatever it is, or kind of like the unknown of intruding in. Like, what? This is a thing that's true. You're telling me that something I believe is wrong, and then also that my very mechanism by which I judge what is true could be in error. Like, how did I let that through? How did I fall into error? That calls into question other things. Then I might be wrong about other stuff too, if you're correct. Then the emotions brought up by that in a wise person, I think it generates the response to consider the opinion and check, is it true or not, right? Either I'll liberate myself from an illusion, or I'll go, no, they're wrong, you know, and maybe I can help them, liberate them from their illusion. But maybe often people go, they cook up another narrative, or their subconscious does, to explain away the emotion. Like, oh no, this emotion's here because that person's doing something wrong, or they're,
Exactly. So, you know, you can just print a new label and put it on the jar and be like, that's what's inside. It's
exactly.
actually, it's actually just frustration because you're so dumb, but really it's shame because I don't want to consider that you might be right, or the idea.
Mm.
So powerful emotions, which the whole thing of new ideas or belief systems being challenged. I think human beings are 99% emotional, yet they think they're 1% emotional, and 99% emotional, 1% reason or logic a lot of the time, particularly
Mm.
if you're flying on autopilot and you're just going with your programming. Which leads me to the other thing I was going to say, where, yes, say as far as any challenging idea, or someone being labeled a conspiracy theorist because they're considering ideas that are outside of the mainstream. They could be totally wrong, hypothetically,
Oh yeah.
which is very common, or quite right, which is also common.
Mm-hmm.
There are examples of that.
Yep.
And people could be doing that because of the intellectual dishonesty and the emotional, immaturity, for lack of a less judgmental sounding word.
Yeah.
That response to be like, oh, I don't want to think about this, so I'm going to project ridicule, or some other blanket emotion to not have to actually be like, deal with the situation. That you are either in error of a belief, or your behavior, or, there's something to be reconsidered. But the other aspect is that in this day and age, I think, it does appear like people are somewhat, trained and encouraged to ridicule someone who's considering an idea that threatens the system. Like,
Mm-hmm.
if there's something that makes lots of money, and someone wants to criticize that, hypothetically, if they have good grounds to criticize it, regardless, there will often, people in those situations will be called a conspiracy theorist, because it's in a survival sense. If you're a powerful corporation, you'll be like, oh,
Yeah.
conspiracies. That is also an aspect at play, I think, where it's not just that people are, that in response to ridicule someone is their own idea, their own response. There is seemingly an aspect, which is probably just how it's always been with the powerful. Once upon a time, it was the king. You can't ridicule the king,
Mm-hmm.
and there's propaganda of the king is superhuman or something. And so, yeah, I think certainly in this day and age, people ridicule certain ideas because they're told to ridicule those ideas,
Right.
and it's
Yeah.
practical.
And I think part of that is it's like it slips in, you think it's your own, like how much of our opinions are ours and how much of that is actually, it's just what you were taught by mummy and daddy, and they were taught by their mummy and daddy, or you're taught at school, um, like if you got a bunch of 13-year-olds, some French 13-year-olds, Australian 13-year-olds, Irish 13-year-olds, German 13-year-olds, whatever, Chinese 13-year-olds, put them all together and go, all right, talk about what you learn in maths class. All right, great. Same stuff. Probably, it seems like China's probably doing more difficult maths, but basically it'd be the same. Like the Korean and Japanese students I have, they're like, man, Canadian maths is amazing. Like, it's so easy. They're like 2 years behind. Crazy. Like, literally 2 years behind.
Wow.
Anyway, yeah. Um, but and then like, what are you learning in science class or grammar class? Okay, same stuff. What are you learning in history class or in politics? It's like, well, I learned that, and like, then you probably go, oh, wait a minute, we're all being taught different stuff. I was taught this is the reason for this war. You were taught that. You were taught that this was a good thing. You were taught that's a bad thing. And that's where we start to see public schools. There's certain, of course, just like with ourselves, we're going to be biased to some extent because that's part of the ego. And the ego is to some extent, it's out of whack, of course. I think in this age, it's below, in general, we need to kind of trim the virulent growth of our the ego, but like you do need, it's a natural thing, like for us to be part of this, material universe here, to have the sense of individuated self, but whatever. But there's like that kind of national sense of self, which has a certain, of course, like instinct, natural instinct of tribal kind of thing of this is our story and this is what keeps us organized. We're the good guys, of course. We're always the protagonist. But the point being, yeah, like there's certain things that slip in where it's like you're taught things and you think you're taught at such a young age, then you don't realize maybe later on, like, I just thought that was my choice to ridicule, say, conspiracy theorists, but actually maybe that was inserted as a program somewhere earlier on. The thing I was going to say as well, that, yeah, I think it is a natural thing, like you say, like the kings had their propaganda thing or whatever, but like, say, money and corporations, if you're a corporation and you're devoting 0% of your money to public relations and influencing politicians, etc., you're not playing the game. You're not competing with everyone else. You're going to get taken over by people who will do that.
Yeah,
So
you're not representing your shareholders
exactly,
to
and then
maximize their profits as per your mandate.
that's it. It's kind of like an evolutionary pressure where, I think to some extent there are bad actors. There are people who are selfish. They just want money. They'll do whatever they want, sell their country down the river for it. There are people who are, maybe enjoy doing bad things. It gives them a kick to pollute a river, maybe. But I think they're in the extreme minority. I'd say the majority of people who do bad things, they either think it's for the good, or they're just like, hey, look, if I don't do it, someone else will. And that is actually true, I think. Like, I don't think you should, I think you should boycott the system and just build a better system. But like, say there is a CEO who's like, well, okay, I'm going to do the right thing and I'm going to stop, doing whatever. And this, I'm not going to encourage the ridiculing of people who are, I'm not going to call someone a conspiracy theorist or a pseudoscientist or a quack doctor or whatever. I'm not going to be part of that system of kind of bending and warping the truth, or whatever it is, just any bad influence. Then if that's cutting down on the profits of the corporation, the board, even if the board like you, the shareholders, they're looking for as much profit as soon as possible, and they're going to vote you out and put in someone who will play ball. Or if the shareholders are really cool, that you're probably going to, market share is going to shrink because the mass, sorry to just cut you off, but the majority of the psychology, I think, is in favor of profit. So, but you can find niche markets of more conscious people who would support businesses like that. I think it comes back to the need for like individual psychological and spiritual maturity as the solution for all these things,
Yeah, and value to the shareholder for one man's trash is another man's treasure or whatever. One person's treasure is another person's trash. Like if someone is more spiritually minded and they have different ethics and principles, then if they were going to invest their money, they would be it would be following a different system of value, not just how much money you're going to make me, but how are you going to make me that money?
Yeah.
Am I going to, invest in a company that say is, hurting the environment or hurting people and they make lots of money, but it's deeply unethical? if not even criminal.
Hmm.
Um, and if you know, a lot of people wouldn't, increasingly, I think, aren't going to want to be involved in that sort of thing, because it's not like it's necessary to be involved in unethical operations, even as like a very vague, you know, tangential kind of accessory to it. You don't need to be involved in that. And I think, in general, the way the universe is moving, all that older system of profits at the expense of the earth or the expense of relationships or the expense of the spirit of the human being, all that stuff's just going to fall away, I think. So, you know,
Absolutely.
there are new systems which will follow the same archetype but to a more positive ends as the whole zeitgeist changes and human consciousness rises.
Yeah, and I think it's like it was a necessary step toward like this efficiency, and like how can we create these structures which are insanely good at developing technology and systems that pull people up out of poverty, etc., or whatever. But like, it's like say you need to you've got a sheet of paper and you're trying to make a curve. Okay, you cut it once. Now you've got like three sides, right? And then those two corners you cut, and now it's closer to a curve, and then you cut those corners. So you're getting closer and closer to the ideal of this curve. Um, or you could say kind of like the pendulum metaphor, going too far this way, too far back. Either way, it's like an
Mm.
iterative process where you're getting closer to the ideal. And I think, yeah, the next step for sure is going like, well, doesn't really make sense because we're hurting ourselves, and when you get more aware, and suffering generates awareness, so we're the suffering of the earth and the suffering of our countries
Mm-hmm.
and ourselves as individuals and families. I think it's generating this awareness that like something's got to give, and so yeah, like it for sure. I think there's this increasing awareness of the need for institutions, business or educational or governmental or whatever, which actually are grounded in integrity and honesty and um, sustainable service to the benefit of the whole of the planet and humanity,
Mm-hmm.
and etc. And not just
Yeah.
saying that, like which is that's funny. That's the next step, like, or the current step. A lot of them are just lip service.
Virtue signaling, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, it's kind of like, and you know, for the record, a lot of these corporations are deeply criminal, you know, like let's just say, call it what it is. I think there is definitely that aspect
Yes.
too. And that's because it's come from this kind of cowboy mentality culture that we're like talking about moving beyond as people become more sensitive to their interconnected nature to all things and all other beings, you know, that it's not just about me. If I'm like really successful, but I'm trampling on everyone around me to get there, I won't be able to sleep at night. And,
Unless you
you
take
know,
pills. There's pills for
which
that.
makes lots of money for somebody, I don't
It's a
know how it
beautiful
is.
system. Um,
Yeah.
and
Uh,
and of course, you don't mean everyone in the corporation is a criminal, but
no, no, no.
the
There is, oh, there's just,
minority.
there is going to be some criminal aspect to anything which makes a huge amount of money, or like at least in the sense of these corporations. There are examples, like there are court cases, you know,
Yeah.
um, where it's like charges of fraud or, you know, conspiracy to do this or that.
Hmm.
So if you went through the historical record of different legal cases with different corporations, you would find some percentage of it there was criminality involved, and you would find that in, you know, probably any sort of system, any situation where there's a way to make money. I remember like when we were kids, and I had bought this diamond shiny Pokemon card with this butterfly thing on it, and I paid a lot of money for it, and it turned out it wasn't even real; it was counterfeit. So I got punked, you know.
Whoa.
So there's someone making a criminal angle at the Pokemon card game,
Someone's got
you
to
know.
do it.
So of course you're going to find that in any sort of thing. Most likely is there's that part of a human being that's like, hey, I could like do this dishonestly and like make money. So I think that happens to an extent, but of course not. You know, the majority of people involved in corporations would not be criminal. But
Yeah.
I think there is room for greed and, you know, me over you sort of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think eventually that will be, it gets transcended as people become more self-aware, because what I do to you I do to myself on some level.
For sure.
But at least currently I think it would be disingenuous to be like, oh, and
A few bad
avoid
apples.
the elephant in the room, that obviously, you listen to your politicians and like, oh, that was a politician's answer. You're like, what on earth do you mean? Oh, you basically avoided the question and essentially just
We
tried
asked
to.
we asked them twice, and they had a reasonable enough. It didn't trigger our annoyance that much. So all right, fair enough. They passed the test. We'll ask. We'll try again next time. We can't ask
Yeah,
them three times. That would be rude. You know.
so we're running out of time. On to the next question. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Jaina, we're gonna have to cut. I'm not gonna give
yeah,
you another interview if you keep being so sassy. You know. Like.
yeah.
All
So
right. So.
any honest conversation around, like, I don't know, the modern culture, or what we're talking about here with, as far as ideas, or when there's power or money at stake, that someone being, we got onto this tangent from conspiracy theorists or anyone who's being sort of silenced. You don't need to be a conspiracy theorist. You could just be inconvenient and being silenced because you're getting in the middle of profits. It could be you're a domestic terrorist because you're chaining yourself to a tree in the Amazon, for instance. Well, you're a domestic terrorist, but you're just inconvenient. So whatever name is going to help make you conveniently out of the way, that is going to happen in a system where there's a lot of money at stake, and where people are coming from the level of consciousness we currently are at, where we are tending to be, even our own selves, like I could speak for myself, sometimes I get frustrated with people, or I'm like, and it's me against them for that moment, until I'm like, wait a second, we're all kind of the same. So I'm really at, like, just war with myself if I'm feeling that. So zooming it out, bringing it back into what we're talking about, that would be changing as time goes on, but currently, there is some sort of misconduct, I would say.
Absolutely. Um. Yeah. I had a point, but I lost it. But I
True.
think I think I
My voice sounds really good. I just
yeah, just
kept
got
going. Yeah.
lost in the caramel creaminess of your eloquence. Um, but yeah, I was gonna say that yeah, so being at war with ourselves if we judge, and that it is a natural thing for this. What was it? Um, well, whatever, it'll come to me. But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, we're sort of dipping to sort of breach the surface of the idea of, like, changing consciousness, or people becoming more self-aware, and that it is a natural kind of thing for now. The way people sort of interact, I guess, that there is a bit of me over you, or
yeah, right. So yeah, I remember it was that to give the devil his due. Like, what's the other, or his due? His
Mm.
foggy mountain dew. Um, uh, the other side is, I think, if you asked, all right, if we had some dude with like a muffled voice and in silhouette being like, yes, I am the secret head of some certain devious corporation or whatever.
Right.
Um, like, what would they say in their defense? I suspect there would be certain people who would say, well, like, actually, um, basically, this is nature. We're in the jungle.
Mm-hmm.
You have the ethic of a servant or a peasant who would prefer the king wasn't a king, or they weren't kings. But I have the ethics of a king, and my rules are different, and yours are convenient for you, mine are convenient for me. And they would say, like, okay, um, we are following the rules of the game, but it's just that part of the game is that I'm not telling you what the game is, right? So
Mm-hmm.
you think the game is, and most people think the game is, like fair competition, etc. But no, the game is actually this. I'm secretly exploiting you. I'm telling you this is what I'm doing, but I'm actually, creating a little, like someone else said this recently. I was listening, like, give your enemy like a virtual reality to live in. You trick them about try and confuse them about what you're up to. And so that they're not living in the real world. They're living in this little virtual reality of what they think is happening between them and you. And
It's
so,
almost like Sun Tzu.
sorry?
It's almost Sun Tzu, appear
Yeah.
weak when you are strong, strong when you are weak. Or
Wow. Indeed.
mind,
Yeah.
mind fuck the opponent, basically.
Indeed. Yeah. Yeah. Um, but I think, yeah, there would be people who feel like, look, all's fair in love and war. And basically, where is it written that I need to tell you what we're doing? But yeah, we're competing with you fairly. But part of that competition is that we're telling you that, these are the boundaries of the game, but they're not the real boundaries of the game. We're actually, yeah, the state apparatus, which I think is far too big. It's very expensive. We're taxed far more than we need to. 100 years ago, only very wealthy people were taxed income tax. Now we're all giving away enormous amounts of our money, and we have to spend huge amounts of time, sorting out the paperwork, etc. So, and there's so many other hidden taxes on things, and not to mention inflation, where they print money, which is taxing our money. All of our dollars, each of them is worth less every time they print more.
And who prints it anyway?
I think it must be the government. No, it couldn't be private corporations, could it?
What? Yeah, central bank. Central bank.
Oh, my head back into the left.
Yeah.
Yeah, central banks. People like, yeah, even the word central bank. Like, I think very few people know what that means. I heard that for years. I was like, oh, central bank, okay, it's a bank, right? No, different to a normal bank. Look up what a central bank is. Watch a few documentaries. Like, I never learned about these in school.
Yeah.
But point being, like, that the state is, I think, bloated and, not actually useful. And if it was more lean and we kept 80% more, we paid 80% less tax, we got 80% less, or the government did 80% less stuff, I think it would be better. But anyway, that's neither here nor there. Point is, the state's very involved in our lives, and the idea is like, oh, it's separate to the market. But no, it's actually part of the market, and the corporations have bought the state, through electoral campaign funding, or through, whining and dining, or through private contracts, or like, oh yeah, we'll do this service for you, and getting influence, or whether it's the revolving door of people working in a corporation, then they work in the state and they go back to the corporation, or whatever it is. They're basically or cultural influence, where they can control, university funding for grants, for studies, for certain whatever, controlling the zeitgeist. The point being, the money and power, surprise, surprise, actually doesn't respect the boundary of public versus private. The whole thing is secretly kind of private, influenced within the market, and so I think that's, anyway. Point being that we're playing this game. And I think that would be, they would say, it's all fair, but they're missing the fact that they're doing it to themselves, I think.
Right. I mean, and it is fair in a sense that it keeps the story moving and everyone learning.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, if I make a mistake, if I'm in an abusive sort of friendship of some variety, someone who doesn't treat me well, there would be a vacuum that would be created, and if that person left, that would be filled by someone similar, because we need to learn lessons in life. And I think this, the spiritual aspect to all this, which is, I think, essential, and effectively undeniable if you're willing to look into it. I think it is just the most rational conclusion, and that the universe is fundamentally meaningful and aware, and that the fact of something instead of nothing is more or less synonymous with God. In that context, then if someone treating you poorly, or a corporation treating the market poorly, being like dishonest, or a government treating their people poorly, it's all kind of within a larger context of evolution. So yeah, when if a like you're saying, they would someone might, in their private confession be like, yeah, well, all's fair in love and war, or whatever the expression is.
Hmm.
This is just the law of the jungle, and that, but they don't realize they're doing it to themselves. I think it's, and they don't realize they're doing it to themselves. But it is fair because it is evolution, and we have some role when we look away from something. It's like the politician, not, you say, hey, where does policy come from? Does it seems the policy is spoon fed to the people, and then all the ads go on TV and all this, so that people think they want, do you want A or B? Or do you agree with this point, or do you disagree? It's like, well, hang on a second. There's a third option. Why are we talking about this point? Why aren't we talking about who makes the money? Why are we getting taxed if you can print it out of thin air? Is this like institutionalized classism? Who owns the government?
Yes.
Are you really representing us? Is there an elite class that has a large persuasion over corporations and governments, or any of these questions? I mean, yeah, I think if you don't look at that and you turn away when you see something like the politician being dishonest and avoiding the question, oh, that's not right, but you just deal with it, then you are co-creating that situation of an abusive relationship, by your acquiescence, basically. So
Absolutely.
in that sense, it is kind of a little rough, the foul play in the world. Just like when a lion rips the throat out of a deer, you're like, oh, don't do it. But I guess it's beautiful in some way,
Yeah.
because it's like raw and real. At least it's not like the phony. No, there's a lot of phoniness these days, you know.
You're a psychopath. My God. You should join a corporation. No. Yeah. But there are good corporations. I think, by the way, like not all corporations, I think, are infected with like malice and corruption.
Right, of
I'd
course
say,
not.
but yeah, it's like there's going to be a bell curve or whatever within corporations of a small number of people are really ethical, small number of people are really unethical, most people in the middle somewhere, and then
Right.
across the whole industry or every industry there'll be like a minority which are really good, a minority which are really dark. Seems
Yeah,
the way it works. Probably
and
organized with golden, sacred geometry and golden ratios.
yeah, probably. I mean, it's that whole thing of, if you want to learn about ethics or what is virtuous, if you want to be able to embrace the spectrum and look at what is unethical to, fertilize your ideas of what ethics are.
Hmm.
It's like a lot of this stuff, it's not with judgment or as if everything's bad or everything's all good.
Yeah.
It's a spectrum, and, the whole point is just learning and observation. So,
Absolutely. No
and if you
sweet
want to
without
grow up,
sour.
yeah, exactly. So, I think there are a lot of topics which seem controversial, but they needn't be,
Hmm.
because it's all natural, Um,
Yeah, and
it's
imagine
good about
if you could at the beginning of Star Wars, Darth Vader just goes and wrecks all those dudes, who are like, the twitching, like blonde eyebrows dude, just like so terrifying. When I was a kid watching that, like, oh my God, this guy is terrified, and he's just like waiting, and he just comes and they just like smash them all, like the stormtroopers and
it.
Darth Vader. Imagine, after that, if Princess Leia is like, how could you? And he's like, actually, yeah, good point. What am I doing with my life? All right, let's be friends. You're like, oh, that movie was fast. That went well, did it? No, we
Yeah,
didn't. We didn't learn anything, and we didn't experience the range of emotions of being human. And so I think, yeah, it's an important point that like it's good to go from everything's fine to going, oh, red alert. There's some fishy stuff going on planet Earth, and
hmm
there are babies go to Yemen, to get out of the abstract stuff, and look what's happening there with kind of genocide, etc., assisted by Western allies. What's going
yeah.
on with Saudi Arabia and all that.
Corporations who sell munitions, corporations
Yep,
who
making enormous
build
money
up
off war. Who
places to
want war?
bomb.
Sorry.
Yeah, places who the people who create the weapons to destroy
Uh huh.
cities, the people who get the contracts to build it back up.
Right.
That whole
No bid contracts. Halliburton,
Yeah.
Dick Cheney being vice president, kind of seemingly running the Bush administration, and then former CEO of Halliburton, and then Halliburton gets this no bid contract to rebuild everything he blew up. Interesting,
Right.
you know.
And the
Um,
fact that wars make a lot of money in general, you
yeah,
know.
like that thing, war is a racket. The guy in the 30s who was a general, like a retired, a proper general, like in the United
Mhm.
States Army, saying war is a racket, and it has always been a racket. It's possibly the oldest racket. A racket being, like, you know, you hear it like the Al Capone and stuff, you know, racketeering, but it's basically an illegal enterprise which is not what it no an enterprise which is not what it appears, and it puts up a front to maintain its activities, and it's at the exploitation of the many for the benefit of the few.
Hmm.
So gambling could be a racket, you know, a prostitution, whatever, or war, you know, but where you put up a front of, oh, we're going for democracy, but it's like something else. But point being, like, yeah, like you say, all these, so it's good to become aware of this. That's a positive step in evolution and maturity of perspective. But then it's not the end goal where you're like raging about, you know, how life is so unfair and what's going on. That's actually just wait. You know, on the other side, you go, oh yeah, okay, it is, you know, a veritable fish market. This planet, there's a lot of, you know, a lot of strange things going on. However, actually, this is good because it's part of this beautiful story. History is the greatest story of all. Try to outright history. You know, good luck to you. And it requires dark and light. And yeah, so
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, yeah, truth is stranger than fiction. Kind of another good saying to throw in there. I mean,
yeah.
I think that's the
And
thing is,
truth is stranger than fiction is also stranger than fiction and truth.
truth is
It's truth.
danger than fiction.
uh, yeah, truth is
Truth is
uh,
danger, then friction.
right, and froth is proof of diction.
Oh yeah, I remember that one. It's good.
Yeah, learned that from the government in school.
Yeah.
Taught me what was what. Um,
Very good.
Nosedive into absurdity.
Yeah, yeah, very
Surprised.
good. And that's, the humor also very, very
Indeed.
necessary. But which sort of connects to what I was about to say is, if you want to, I think, if you want to live a full life, you need to have open eyes and an open heart. And you need to actually process what comes in those eyes and into your heart. And so if you see something that's beautiful, you need to celebrate it. If you see something that's maybe negative or like parasitical, something not ideal, you don't need to completely like freak out or lose your mind. You can look at it and understand it within the context of beauty, and that there is this spectrum of light and dark and this play of opposites, just like music, and the cadence of life, and that ultimately, yeah, it makes life more beautiful if you can accept the dark with the light and be honest with what you see and what you feel, your intuition in the world. But all of that spectrum to be fully embraced requires some sort of either, spiritual sort of openness to spirituality in the sense of that life is meaningful at the bare minimum, and that it's a beautiful story, and that the hero learns or is introduced to their strength through adversity, and there is the poignant, beautiful theme of every great movie is transformation. At the end of it, the character has learned something, and that is us in this life. So we shouldn't shun and avoid any negativity, whether it's within our own minds or within our relationships or within our societies or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
We should embrace it as part of the interplay and like live full lives, So it's not negative, it's part of a play of opposites, and there is meaning and beauty in that play of opposites.
Absolutely. And I think part of the journey of learning and exploration is that you realize it's not A or B. There's option C, right? Or like discovering nuance. It's almost like a picture where it's becoming gradually less pixelated. More details coming in. Oh, that square's green. Oh, actually, it's green and blue. Oh, actually, the blue bit's blue and a bit of purple. Um, in specifically meaning here, like that in this situation, that like it's not, oh, I'm against. I think like you can say that something is should change and is unhealthy, and at the same time accept it, on an emotional level, and not be upset by it. You can understand it and accept it while also saying, yeah, it would be more enjoyable for everyone if, the game would be more interesting if we change that. And
Hmm.
and on a certain, you have to, again, communication. You need to be aware who you're talking to. So I think certain people, you would express that perhaps not as, yeah, I accept it. You might not need to mention that. You just say, this is wrong. We need to change it. And they might assume that you hate it. And that's fine, because if you said you accept it, they might get the wrong idea. Certain people who aren't at that stage of depixelation of morality or ontology or something, and they go like, so, and we all have different things we're investigating, so that maybe a cook really understands their thing really deep, but then maybe people who are more thinking about the nature of, like, political economy and stuff, or like just what's right, and you know or how to run communities and stuff, then yeah, that would be something you eventually notice. I think is like, if you keep looking, it's like, oh, actually, yeah, we can understand this part of this beautiful story, and at the same time say that on the ultimate level it's fair, and that's all good, and it is fair, and that brings you peace. But then on another level, which is also real, but just perhaps we could say less ultimate, it's not fair, and that's a paradox, but it's not a contradiction. A paradox is something that looks like a contradiction, but it's not really, you know.
Right.
So
Yeah, I mean, you could say, my friend died, you know,
mhm.
uh, that is unfair. And yet, they were born. And for you to be in a position to be bereaved, you were also born. I mean, that's a freebie. Like, you're here, you know?
Yeah, free
So,
real estate, Jim.
free real estate, Jim. Got the keys. So, it's a free house, Jim. So basically, yeah, I mean, you could perceive it as unfair, but ultimately, there's nothing more fair than the fact that we're alive to have any opinion at all. So,
Yep.
I mean, ding dong, you know? So, at that point, I think everything kind of makes more sense. And I think a lot of the reason I feel like people aren't entirely authentic these days. You know,
Yeah.
everybody, myself included, like it's
Mhm.
all this kind of ricocheting around the columns of the mind and being able to
Pinball
find a way
machine
to
of the soul.
express yourself. Yeah.
Bing, bing.
And so, you know, I think a key to that living a deeper life, or just at least for myself, and I imagine for others, considering we're all human beings, if you can open your mind to be able to look into new information about yourself or things outside of yourself and your relationships or the society or the universe, and more esoteric, metaphysical, spiritual understandings of you know um, what meaning is and what life is about, who are we. I think that kind of that is a context in which you can observe the hard truths that some people want to avoid. I think they never get there because they're like, oh, danger, scary. I don't want to think about that. That makes me uncomfortable. But if they could see beyond that to like the beauty and the context, maybe they'd be excited to look at that
Mhm.
ostensibly dark material or that ostensibly negative situation within their own psyche. If you can understand why you're here to grow, we're all here to grow.
Absolutely.
The hero grows through the villain, being like, "Hey, watch
Yep.
out,"
Love
or
thy
whether
enemies.
that's a metaphor or not. You know.
Yeah, love thy enemies, not just because they know not what they do. They're on the ultimate level. They're on autopilot. Their soul is not at the wheel. Their ego, there's a parasite that they think is them, based on suffering and us against them psychology, and it's running the show. Constant thoughts, and there's no space around them. But also love thy enemy, because your enemy teaches you.
Hmm.
Helps you grow. Um, and uh, I knew I should have had more than 7 coffees today. What was I about to say? And I haven't had 7
Well, I didn't have enough coffees, and
coffees.
well, I'm you know,
But yeah,
Give
you
that
was
later.
yeah.
Um,
So you
anyway, I'm trying to tell if my camera's a little blurry or if it's my eyesight's blurry. Probably both.
probably
Anyway,
probably neither.
um,
Could be a third option.
yeah. What I was, yeah, I was gonna say, yeah, the to challenge what you just said momentarily, just because
Yeah.
why not?
Could
Maybe
you
a bit
hold
more
that
fun.
thought?
Yeah.
I just remembered what I was going to say. Or would you like to interrupt my interruption?
I would like to do a really uncouth maneuver and just clean my. Oh,
Well, I can't believe
oh yeah.
you ate the whole thing. Um,
Can't believe I ate the whole. Yeah,
uh, yeah,
proceedeth. But I do have a point, but you proceedeth.
very good. Please hold that sizzling hot potato from hand to hand so that it doesn't burn you, psychically speaking. I think it's very important thing to remember is like often people who are for whatever reason due to the nature of our makeup, a lot of it which is not really within our conscious control, at least at the moment. Who knows how much we chose to come here or something and can figure ourselves like the Sims, like, oh, I want, I'm going to spend 8 points on charisma, 2 points on, conscientiousness or whatever it is. Um, but, or if it's just like, oh, you're born with a brain, you didn't choose the brain, and it's the result of your parents' actions and, whatever, and they, exercising free will, but a lot of that was out of their control, and so on and so forth. It's just the Big Bang continued. But for whatever reason, we are who we are, and um, those of us who are more tempted and for whatever reason have engaged more with anomalies and things that don't make sense within the prevailing structure, yin and yang, order and chaos, we're more willing to flirt with chaos and go, oh, which is also the hero's journey, going out into the unknown, leaving your home country, having a little adventure, seeing if you can find some dragon to slay, get the gold, bring it back home and share it, and go, hey guys, look what I just figured out. These cartels are running the planet, or whatever it is. The point being, any kind of more esoteric information that other people might not be aware of, it's very if it's something kind of that triggers negativity, it's something kind of more negative, you'll notice, rather than, oh, we're all immortal, guys, check it out. That's one thing, and
Right.
but then if it's like, oh, there's this thing, there's these things going on, and it's not so good, bad news, but we need to be aware of it, right? It's worse if we're not aware of it. Then we're more in the cage.
Right.
It's very important that when you express it, with an emotion that is appealing. So people want, you've said this before many times, right? Where someone like, you just got, you don't understand. Da, 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 da. It's like, if you don't look happy, people are going to go, oh, that guy's looking into all this stuff and he doesn't seem very happy. I don't want to be like that. So you got to not bite off more than you can chew, and kind of have the self-awareness to kind of be like, more important than what you're saying is how you're saying it, and having, a kind of serene, calm, humorous is good, humble, just being like, oh, this is if you're interested, I think this is a thing, they go, oh, okay. Then people can receive that. But I think, and so that's the part of the benefit of, if you're really going to try to raise awareness on the planet about things, you really need to do your homework and take care of your, sweep the temple diligently, dawn and dusk, and, keep yourself in a kind of happy place, and where you can show that it is exciting and it is a wonderful, beautiful adventure and hilarious to just dig into the truth of reality, and that it actually is the calmer, more comfortable experience is to devote yourself to truth and open yourself up to contradictions and anomalies.
Absolutely. Yeah. And yeah, going to that, what you brought up about anyone, if someone's overwhelmed and trying to communicate some supposed truth, either it's like you're wrong and you're crazy, or you're right and I'm going to be crazy, if I take that in, or just so effectively no one does anyone a service in an ultimate way if you're emotionally unbalanced and you're being an ambassador of a certain idea. Any moment you're communicating, you're an ambassador of that idea to that person. You're going to create an association on subconscious level. So having that twinkle in the eye as often as possible, you know, and just not sweating it, just partaking in the great
A twinkle in
adventure
the
of
twinkle.
life. Yeah, twinkle in the twinkle. So yeah, I think there's huge promise. I think all people love learning until they go to school, as I always say. No, I'm kidding.
Yeah.
But not kidding. But yeah,
Yeah, not
like
kidding.
education, that is a virtue in just the sense of we are here to learn, I think. So when we're learning about ourselves, we're growing. When we're willing to learn, when we're learning about the world outside us, we're growing in our
Our self
capacity.
outside us.
Ourself outside us, yeah. So that educational spirit doesn't mean, oh, I'm doing my master's in this, or I'm doing this in that institution, you know, which in my opinion, you're more or less just being part of someone else's business model instead of creating your own business. Though to a certain extent you can gain information, but a lot of it's free on the internet. But what I mean by education, more in the spirit of curiosity and learning and having that, realizing that it's so fun to learn new things about yourself and about the world and all this, you know, and that it kind of takes that attitude of courage to look at different things and just know that, you know, as long as you're growing, as long as you're trying different things, it's a beautiful story, you know. So
Absolutely. And, you know, people say, like, oh, um, Jamie's hair's better than Mark's, you know?
right,
And I tell
yeah,
them, well, I mean, that's subjective, but you're probably right, you know? And,
mm,
and then eventually, sooner or later, I go like, look, lads, please stop talking about my hair. The point is, you know,
mm,
um, some people say, you know, like, oh, why would I bring a child into this world with all this suffering? And it's like, well, would you rather your parents hadn't brought you into this world and you're still here? So I think it's a fair implication or inference that you would rather be here, you know, and that, as you say, something's better than nothing. Even something which is full of suffering is better than nothing. So who's going to enjoy the nothing? You know, it's like, oh, it'd be amazing if it was just peace, just nothing existed. Like, well, I mean, you wouldn't be enjoying that nothing. So, you know, couldn't you just kind of, you know, get into a bit of yoga or, you know, mindfulness or whatever, learn to turn off your mind, watch some hilarious movies, hang out with some trees, walk barefoot in nature, whatever, you know, get yourself an ancient Egyptian statue, whatever floats your
mm,
boat, whatever blows your hair back, um, and you know, like live and do your best to make peace with the difficulty of it. But even if you know, your life is full of suffering, if you grow, if you can say, you know what, whether it's short or long, you can say with your life, I've been the hero of my own story, as Joe Rogan would say, which I think was a very powerful thing to me at some point. I was a
mm,
younger man, young fry. I was like, yeah, that's some deep stuff, you know, like
mm,
to be the hero of your own story. And you know, you don't need to be. It doesn't need to be the most interesting story. You don't need to be the greatest hero. But I think, yeah, just to learn. Is this why we're here? To learn, to love, to grow, as Marcus Aurelius once said. You know,
mm.
in his hit song. But yeah, you dig it, right? Digging too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Digging too. Is that Irish again or
I'm digging too. So yeah, yeah.
digging?
Do,
Yeah.
do
So
you understand? Because you know that's the origin of can you dig it? It's like, do you understand? Osquelga.
very good. I forgot how to say yes in Irish.
Well, there is no yes or no in
Well,
Irish. You just repeat the
no.
verb in the positive or negative. So if it's
Ah,
like, pretty sure. So if it's like, and will Gaelga agat, do you have Irish? Do you speak Irish? You go, it's like, is, uh, yeah, and you go like, tá. which is like be, like basically like have, you know, or don't have, but
Cool.
you know,
Mahu.
Mahu.
Yeah.
Exactly. Very good.
Yeah, I got to expand my Irish vocabulary. But yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, what you were saying, yeah, about like being the hero of your own story, or just finding, the fact that you're here. Like, would you rather not be here? I mean, some people do make the decision to not be here, which is pretty intense.
Yeah.
But I mean, even then, from what I can tell, you don't really leave the universe. You just move to somewhere else. We are
Right.
eternal. We are always experiencing. So if someone's like, listen, it's an eternal movie and it goes forever, and there's little chapters. This one chapter is called Mark McGlue or Jamie McGlue. It's a lifetime, and you're going to learn things and have certain experiences, and it just rolls on forever. And forever isn't even a straight line, it's a circle. And it's just learning and growth and love and connection and beauty. And that's the universe. That's like how it works. Would you really want to be like, I'm so tired of this? You'd be like, okay, I got to find a way to not be tired of this because it goes forever.
Yeah.
You know?
Settle
You've
in.
got to find some practical way to like harmonize with the universe. So
Mm.
I think finding beauty out of sorrow or suffering, people say, oh, there's no meaning in life. It's all meaningless. It's like so miserable. It's like, well, like you've said to me before, like people in those situations, like, well, you seem to be finding meaning within your suffering.
Mm-hmm.
So are you sure there's no meaning to life? You seem pretty upset about it. You're certainly experiencing a deep emotion.
Yeah. Why don't you just let it go if it's meaningless?
Right.
You don't believe in that, do you?
Yeah, there is meaning to you. It's meaning something to you. It's afflicting your heart, and metaphorically. And but yeah, I think I don't know any. I feel like this conversation, we need to address the full nature of what is the universe, Jamie.
Yes. Well,
Because
I don't
we would
I
be
don't know about that.
remiss in our duties. What do you
Sorry.
think?
I think the universe should say it for us. Probably. I don't think we're qualified.
Okay. Yeah,
You know,
I
I
mean,
haven't been to university, so I don't think I could speak to that. People
true.
using to instead of about.
Let's say it
Yeah.
silently with our eyes.
Silently. All right.
If you got that.
Let's see. The full nature of reality. Yeah, basically. Yeah, we just said it, right? Silence. That's but I think spirituality we should mention, like, because I used to think that, like, I remember reading like, what is spirituality? I think a lot of intelligent people who could, embark on the path of like adventure of like the path of like a more esoteric wisdom or whatever, or the rambling freewheeling path of cosmic humor, the cosmic giggle,
Mm.
would be like hit up against something which I hit up against, which was like like spirituality. What, that's just hand waving. Like, what does that even mean? And this era of thinking, because I don't understand it, it mustn't make sense. It must be people who are kind of pretending it makes sense, instead of being, which I guess is making an assumption, like Don Miguel Ruiz would say, rather than having the courage to ask a question or the initiative to ask a question, to say, what does that actually mean? Let's look up 10 different definitions of spirituality. And some people are doing hand waving. They don't know what they're talking about. They're like, man, it's like you just got.
They would
It's
do that
just
with everything.
sorry. They do that with everything.
They do that with everything, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. But like, I think, at a bare minimum, like you said, to believe that existence is I think you said something along these lines. Existence is good. It's a good deal. And but I think my basic kind of understanding what you could use spirituality to mean many different things, because words don't have meanings in themselves. They are signposts at aspects of reality. And that's why you could have a word in French or German or Indonesian or whatever, but it's the one phenomenon which is being talked about. They're signposts, right? Why is this word changing? This word's bullshit. What's going on here? No, but would be spirituality is basically oh, that's a good question. What is it? But something along the lines of getting outside of thoughts, and we spend our lives like until I was 17 and went meditating with our beautiful friend Sasha Georgiadis. Shout out to Sasha and Andreas. So, her dad, I think, was going to this Buddhist temple and in Australia, right? And went there and meditated and was out, had no thoughts for like 15 minutes, went deep into this meditation. And I was like shocked that you could experience life without thoughts. I thought life was one long chain of thoughts. This thought leads to that thought, and maybe free will is deciding which direction your next thought will be. But that it's kind of thought to thought. But then actually, no, that's not the only thing in your experience. There's this one space of consciousness, this silent awareness, and then there's thoughts filling that. They're a type of form that fills the space. But so basic spirituality would be kind of waking up, becoming fully sane, waking up out of this dream of only living through linguistic labels for stuff, and I think we all are already that consciousness. That is who we are. But and there's always, I think, moments of you're looking at something or you just feel kind of calm. You're looking at a painting or whatever, and you're not thinking, but you don't realize it. So kind of becoming conscious and intentionally cultivating these spaces of silence, golden silence between thoughts, and then that supercharges your thinking ability because you have the balance of. It's like someone who's trying to go to the gym all the time and they never take a rest day. It's not actually the most efficient.
Right.
Thing. So I'd say spirituality, the balance of that, yeah.
Well, I mean, I guess I would feel like, that would be like an aspect of spirituality, but spirituality as a very vague term, what is spirit? The idea that life is spirit. So instead of someone saying, well, life is just, it's matter, it's the universe, it's a physical thing, life, the cosmos, it's space, it's physical. Well, if there are, aspects to it that are spiritual, or that if you close your eyes, what do you see? Where are you? You're within a space where you don't see anything. You say, well, that's just, you got your eyes closed, there's a body, you're still in the world. Well, okay, maybe that's true. What about when you're dreaming? Your body is still and you're not moving at all. Your consciousness is experiencing a caramel milkshake in, some neighborhood of Chicago, and then, suddenly you go on some bizarre adventure and someone's chasing you with a shopping trolley and you're terrified, and you wake up with, heart palpitations and cortisol going through your blood, and you feel like the adrenaline as if it was a real experience. You're in your bed. There is some spiritual aspect to experience that goes beyond the physical that we can knock on. And in some way, consciousness or awareness, they're probably very similar words. I think spirituality would be more directed towards the idea that the universe is composed of consciousness, not matter or spirit. Spirit is the one spirit of all life. That is the fact of something instead of nothing. So these are all words, but spirituality in my mind would be the, I suppose, the pursuit of truth, or the pursuit of, or the practice of, and the pursuit of being, the fact of being, that is. And when someone says, oh, the spirit of an artist, what do you mean? Is that a metaphor? I don't know. I just said it. Everyone says, I don't know what I'm talking about.
They just told me to say this.
Yeah. So, but I think, certainly it turns a lot of people off, and there would be some people who are intellectually uncomfortable with the idea of spirituality, or would find it underwhelming, and like, oh, those people with like their yoga pants, and oh God, it's like so tiresome and pretentious. And then there's people, sometimes it is. But it's the same, same with everything. You could, you could draw that conclusion upon most things. Human nature plays itself out in whatever your vocation. But I think the important reason why spirituality is important, or you could call it metaphysics if you want a more scientific idea, or esoteric, or for some people it's religion, though I think that's kind of a politicized glass ceiling on spirituality. Really, you're just talking about consciousness or being, life in the universe. You know, it's important because if you go into that, it enriches all your current pursuits you'd have otherwise. But effectively, it's the most practical way to be able to enjoy yourself, to be able to close your eyes and feel good in your own energy. You need to be able to meditate, like what you were saying about the thoughts, but also if you can have some sort of building blocks of how does the universe work and look into it, even if you don't find the answer, you're going to understand more than if you never look. So it's almost like the quest to be happy and to be your authentic self is going to involve looking into some deep stuff that goes beyond the coffee table and, you know, just the physical things you see around you. It's spiritual. What do you reckon?
Yeah, sounds about right. And
Cool. Well, that was good talking.
wrapped it up. Um, yeah, I think a lot of it though is like it's like it is this openness to just experience and um, you know, like because the thing is spirituality is like God. It's kind of a word for that which is outside of words. So
Right.
you could there's no one answer really. I think basically it's a signpost pointing at that which is beyond signposts. You know, like someone said, God is a unique word in the English language or in language because God in English, right? But meaning that it's the word which is for all the things we don't understand. We don't know what it is, you know. And you could use
Yeah.
God in different. You could mean the creator of the universe and the sustainer, or the infinite consciousness, which is experiencing life through all its little parts. The
Yeah.
tree to which we are the stems, etc. But
Source. You know, the
hmm?
source of being,
Yeah,
whatever.
um,
Because God
but
is very triggering for most people.
yeah, absolutely, very loaded with like connotations of the internal dictionaries don't line up. Like, oh, you mean that guy? That kind of Zeusian fellow who like
Yeah,
told me what to
or
do?
the Catholic Church, or
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah. Whereas we mean something very different. But but uh, but yeah, I think um, spirituality is kind of this intellectual humility of like just an openness to truth seeking, and it turns out that it's all aspects of being. You know, there's just many facets of the diamond. So the jewel. You know, it's like there's like the fundamental. Here's a fun game, Mark. All right, so what are the fundamental facets of the jewel of existence? We have being, right? That might be the inside facet. I don't know. Um, but then
okay.
humor would be love. You couldn't throw them off the list, right? They're too fundamental, right? Love, humor,
I agree.
truth. What else? What do you reckon?
Beauty,
Beauty,
I'd say
yeah. Joy,
goodness, joy,
goodness,
yeah, peace. I mean, we could go forever.
peace,
I
yeah,
suppose.
yeah. Maybe could we?
I
Maybe.
suppose so.
Should we? No, probably not.
Mm.
But
Um,
very
I
good.
think, yeah, that as far as the whole, just rounding back on that spirituality or whatever, even if you don't want to use that word, I don't really use that word myself that often. I just will talk about, like, what does it mean to be who I am? What does it mean to be happy, to be growing, to be learning? Like, where am I going? You know, if I'm gonna exit this life at a certain amount of time, what do I want to? If I reverse engineer that, what do I want to see when I'm on my deathbed looking back? I have total control over that at this point. And if you embrace that reality and you just look back, you're like, I want a meaningful, happy life.
Yeah,
Then whatever way you go about it, as long as I think you're being good to yourself and true to yourself, you will be good to the world and true to the world. So if you just embrace and love yourself, which is often a challenge. I think everything else follows. So instead of what is all these ideas, spirituality, blah blah blah. I think if
Right.
people, if people just love themselves and just be who you are, you already exist. So the hard part's done. If you just love it and enjoy it,
Yeah.
then
Sure.
everything follows. Surely. I mean,
Yeah.
this just occurred to me. Maybe I'll go practice this. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. No. Right on. Beautiful. I
Hmm.
dig that. Yeah. And love yourself, accept yourself, uh, and yeah, the simultaneous thing of being able to accept yourself and love yourself, and also enjoy, just for fun, just keep growing, and that they actually are mutually reinforcing. The more you accept yourself, the more you can improve and grow. The more you improve and grow, the more you can accept yourself. You know, so
Absolutely.
very good. So Mark, this is what almost an hour and a half, I think. So
Hmm.
how are you ready for um, to go to Chicago and get chased by trolleys and whatever this strange dream was? Or you could choose another dream.
Well, yeah. I mean, I didn't have that one, but maybe something nicer. Yeah, I'm pretty ready. I haven't been remembering my dreams recently though.
Mm.
I need to work on that. I'd rather fly.
Yeah,
Hopefully I'll fly, and I don't know. Well, if I have a lucid dream, Jamie, what do you think I should do? Any requests? Oh.
probably. Good question. Dream? You're having a lucid dream, or is that too
I'll ask the
obvious?
dream what your next podcast episode should be about. Or
Yeah, but then you're gonna have to saddle up and deal with the deja vu of that. You'd be like, it's happening, you know, when it manifests. Or
hmm.
you could have a lucid dream about, I'd say, whoever listens to this podcast first, kind of fill in the blank now. What Mark should have a lucid dream about? Omni Deo, Omni Oreo, Dio, Dinodio, Omnio, Omni Deo.
Oh.
Cool. So you could, or maybe about love, something related to love, as a plan
How
B.
could I love myself fully, even more?
How couldn't you?
That's a good point.
Very good. So Twintuition. Do you want to
Should
give
we
us?
close out with a song as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
Oh
bring
yeah,
us
okay.
bring us home with a little music.
I'll do a slow, more ballad version of it or something.
Okay.
It's a roly-poly world, all the good boys and girls sitting wishing, twintuition. Roly-poly world, all the girls and boys sitting wishing, into wish, twintuition.
Beautiful.
Hmm.
Gahal and Orfad. Very beautiful altogether there.
We could work on the lyrics a little, make them make more sense.
Yeah, yeah.
It's a good start.
It's good. I love it. Cool,
Hmm.
man. Well, thanks for joining the podcast, and
Yeah.
thank you for joining us, sweet beings of our divine triplet slash quadruplet slash whatever you call camera 3. Uh, our 8 billion more or less twins of our brothers and sisters of the
Hmm.
planet, and all those invisible beings hovering around our celestial entourage.
Mm-hmm.
Much
Yeah.
love.
Thank you to and from the Great Spirit. Something like
All
that.
hail existence.
I was going to say the hypnotoad, but yeah,
Yeah,
sounds
well,
good.
that too. Yeah, that'll be good.
All
Thank you,
right,
people.
well,
Thank you, Mark.
thank you, James.